A judge has been removed from the bench, not because of bribery, not because of corruption in the conventional sense, but because he sentenced a man to life imprisonment using a law that no longer existed, and the body responsible for policing Nigeria's judges has now confirmed it in writing. This is not speculation. This is the official finding of the National Judicial Council, and what it means for the case of Nnamdi Kanu is something every Nigerian must understand. Let us go back to the beginning, when Justice James Omotosho delivered his judgment in the case involving Nnamdi Kanu. He relied on a specific statute as the legal foundation for both the conviction and the sentence. That statute, according to the NJC's own investigation, had already been abolished before the day of sentencing. It had been struck from the books. It carried no legal force. It could not create an offense, it could not support a conviction, and it had no power to authorize punishment of any kind. Yet a life sentence was handed down under it. The NJC did not receive a complaint and set it aside. It opened a formal investigation. It went through the full text of the judgment. It checked the statutory provisions cited against official legislative records, against repeal instruments, against published gazettes. The conclusion was unambiguous. The law used to put Nnamdi Kanu away for life had been legally dead before the judge ever picked up his pen. Now here is what the law says about that situation. Under Nigerian law, jurisdiction is not a secondary matter. It is not a procedural footnote that can be corrected on appeal. Jurisdiction is the entire basis of a court's authority to act. A court that acts without jurisdiction produces nothing legally sustainable. Its orders carry no valid force. Its convictions rest on nothing. The NJC used precise language on this point. It said the trial court acted without valid jurisdiction. That is not the language of reform or mild correction. That is the language of a fundamental legal failure. The NJC also addressed an argument that defenders of the judgment might raise. They said this was not a mistake of interpretation. Interpreting a valid law wrongly is one thing. Judges do that, appeals are filed, courts correct errors, but applying a law that no longer exists is an entirely different category of failure. You cannot interpret something that does not exist. You cannot exercise criminal jurisdiction under legislation that has been wiped from the statute books. The NJC drew that line clearly, and it drew it for a reason. On the question of what Justice Omotosho was expected to do, the council was equally direct. Judges in criminal proceedings are required to verify the current status of every law they apply. That duty is not optional. It is not discharged by relying on what a law used to say. Statutory repeals are matters of public record. They are accessible. They are part of the legal materials available to every court in this country. There is no basis for claiming ignorance of a repeal that has been formally gazetted and published. The NJC also found that courts possess inherent authority to raise jurisdictional questions on their own without waiting for the parties to bring them. If a jurisdictional defect exists, a court is empowered and indeed obligated to address it before proceeding. The council found no evidence that any such step was taken before the life sentence was imposed on Nnamdi Kanu. That finding led to the next stage. The NJC determined that the conduct crossed the threshold of gross judicial misconduct. That phrase carries specific meaning under the NJC's own rules. Gross judicial misconduct includes actions that undermine the integrity of the judicial process, violate constitutional safeguards, or reflect a fundamental failure to uphold the law. The council determined that sentencing a person to life imprisonment under an abolished statute satisfied every one of those criteria, and the severity of the penalty, life imprisonment, the most extreme custodial sentence available under Nigerian law, made the gravity of the misconduct even more pronounced. A full disciplinary hearing was convened. Justice Omotosho was formally notified of the findings. He was given the opportunity to respond, to present his explanation, to address the council on every issue raised. Due process was observed. After the hearing, the disciplinary panel made its recommendation. Justice James Omotosho should be removed from office on the grounds of gross judicial misconduct arising from the application of an abolished law in a criminal case. The full council reviewed that recommendation and adopted it. The removal was formalized and transmitted through the appropriate constitutional channels. From that point, Justice Omotosho ceased to hold judicial office. He could no longer sit on cases, preside over proceedings, or issue any judicial order. His time on the bench ended because of what he did in the case of Nnamdi Kanu. Now let us be precise about what the NJC did and did not do. The NJC does not have the power to overturn convictions. That authority belongs exclusively to the appellate courts. What the NJC has done is document, in official findings, that the legal foundation of the sentence was an abolished statute. That documentation is now part of the formal record. Any appellate court reviewing Nnamdi Kanu's case will have before it the NJC's own conclusion that the court acted without valid jurisdiction. Appellate courts retain full authority to declare proceedings void, to set aside sentences, and to issue orders consistent with constitutional requirements where a conviction is found to rest on a law that no longer existed. The NJC made one further point that should be heard clearly. Judicial independence does not shield a judge from accountability for actions taken without legal foundation. Independence protects judges from political pressure and external interference. It does not protect them from the consequences of applying laws that were repealed before they were ever invoked. Those are two different things, and the Council insisted on that distinction. What happened here is not just the removal of one judge. It is the formal institutional confirmation that the legal basis of a life sentence imposed in this country was legally void. The machinery of judicial discipline has done what it was designed to do. The question now before the appellate courts is whether the sentence that arose from that void legal foundation will be allowed to stand. That question has not yet been answered, but after the NJC's findings, the legal landscape of this case has shifted in a way that cannot be ignored.